The DOJ considering a potential breakup of Google. Joining us right now to discuss this and so much more, Jay Clayton, former SEC Chairman, non-executive chair of Apollo, American Express board member, and CNBC contributor. Jay, you like the idea of breaking up Google? Do you think there's a problem there, and is that the right remedy?
Andrew, it's so interesting that the DOJ filed their brief and said, look, everything is on the table, including a significant breakup of what we all know as a ubiquitous company. As I look at it right now, no, I'm not in favor of a structural remedy like that. I think the history of those types of remedies in this country, particularly for cutting-edge technology companies, is dubious. But what I will say is the brief from the Justice Department, which is pretty short, does recognize a new level of network effects across the global economy. What do they say are the problems with Google? They say they have revenue sharing with distribution globally. They say they can order search results and therefore elevate some companies over others. They say they have great power over advertising. And at the end of the day, they have a tremendous ability to gather data sets that set them apart from all their competitors. On the one hand, you can say that's a ton of power that no company should have. On the other hand, you could say, wow, look at what we've put in the hands of consumers right on their phone, and they're able to deal with all of that in seconds in what would have taken days. So
Jay, here's the question.
I celebrate technology.
Right. But as it relates, therefore, to a behavioral remedy, if you said, for example, look, Google, you guys are too ubiquitous. We need competition in there. We won't allow you anymore to pay Apple, for example, as a distribution partner to make your browser or your search engine the default search engine. Is that fair? Because then it's actually very interesting. Is that fair to Apple? Do you then have Microsoft come in with Bing and become the default search engine and pay a much lower fee for what may be a lesser product? I don't know.
Yeah, your questions show just how dangerous it is when you start to look at the effect on competitors as opposed to the effect on consumers. I'm a strong believer that at the end of the day, you look at what's better for the consumer, Andrew, than what's better for a particular competitor here or a particular competitor here. When they started this case, I don't think the DOJ had any idea that AI would be a potential replacement for search.
And therefore, you would do what? Nothing?
I would look at where there
might be the answer. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, that's the question. In the government, I think first you should do no harm. I think that's a pretty good baseline to start with. But I would look at are there places where there's been an information advantage, or where there's been what I would say is true leverage and tying imposed in order to exclude competitors. I found some of the findings there, particularly speculative.
But how much of this is about, we talk about competition and innovation. How much of this is about being able to use capital today, and that is the competitive edge? When you look, we were just talking about NVIDIA, and we had Jensen Huang, who had, had a cameo appearance on our set last week. There is a question about just how much capital, especially when it comes to AI, is needed to be competitive. It seems these days that if you have enough money and can get access to enough of Jensen's chips, for example, and you have a little bit of secret sauce when it comes to building algorithms, that you have a chance in the AI space. But not many have a chance in the AI space, not because of the algorithm piece, but because of the capital piece to buy the chips.
You bring up a great point that I think a lot of people are missing here, which is, let's just say AI is a global race, which I think we all believe, and that AI is important to national security, our economic health, and all of these things. We're actually in the most enviable position imaginable. We have at least 5 that I can count companies that are throwing what some people would say is an inordinate amount of capital at AI. I would not, if I were the government, I would monitor that very closely and see if that 5 is going to 3 or 2 or 1. But I love the position we're in right now, and I'm not sure I'd do a whole lot about it.
Jay, before we let you go, I have one final question. It actually has to do with this story that we were talking about in the last hour. Lighthizer, who's been going around and having meetings around tariffs, or at least discussing the idea of imposing tariffs almost immediately if former President Trump were to win this election. Is your sense that these tariffs would go on immediately? The reason I ask is there was also a view, which, by the way, I think I espoused at one point, which was that these tariffs would be used, if they were, as a negotiating tool, as a way of trying to push China and other countries to do things that may be in our interest. Now, maybe you have to impose them immediately to get that negotiating leverage, but I don't think that almost anybody expected they would be imposed on day one.
Andrew, let me tie your question together with what we were just talking about in terms of antitrust and competition policy. I do think that if you have a Trump victory, day one, I don't know about action, but day one there will be a review across the board. Because what we have had during the Biden-Harris presidency is a substantial shift in the regulatory state, a substantial shift in trade, and I think all of those things that shifted from 2020 to 2024 will be under review. And it makes sense. I think that the softening in trade policy with China, the softening in trade policy particularly with Iran, and the question of whether secondary sanctions are on the table, which Brian Sullivan was just talking about, all of that will be under review.